An intellectual carrot, the mind boggles.
You see? You see? You're stupid minds. Stupid! Stupid!
Earth has had Santa Claus long enough. We will bring him to Mars.
I've been afraid a lot of times in my life, but I didn't know the real meaning of fear until I had kissed Becky.
One thing will be clear. It's not for man to interfere in the ways of God.
It's alive. Oh, it's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Earth vs. Soup, episode 158. I'm Aaron Pellier.
I'm Darlene.
We watched another Universal
of Dracula.
House of Dracula from 1945. I almost said 49 for some reason.
45, December 7th.
Okay, so it's post-war that it got released. Post-war. Finally, we're out of the times where I have to keep yelling about, like, the SS hunting down people in these movies.
It's 67 minutes long.
It is a continuation of the plot from House of Frankenstein, and it's a rehash. It's a rehash again of these movies, and here's the thing: a lot of people end up comparing this movie and House of Frankenstein together.
Yes,
because they are so similar. Some people think House of Frankenstein is the better movie. I don't. Yeah, we both don't. We think House of Frankenstein, while it was okay,
it felt like you were on a train wreck.
It feels like
it's going down the road.
It feels like a train wreck as well, but there's an actual resolution to a story arc.
You can go from one car to the other without jumping tracks.
I don't know what you're talking about anymore, Darlene.
I'm talking about the fact that they had where it seemed like it was like 4 different movies thrown into one.
Well, House of Frankenstein was 2 movies. This is House of Dracula. It's 1.5 different movie plots, but they're effectively the same thing as the last one.
It moves a lot
Not really.
smoother.
Yeah, this one's a bit smoother, and like I said, there's an actual resolution to a plot, and we'll get to that. So there's lots of returning characters in this.
Everybody that was dead. Everyone
that's dead in the last movie, except for Boris Karloff's Mad Professor, he's dead. He's gone. He's actually like a skeleton in this. He's dead. Whatever his name was, it doesn't matter. There's a new mad scientist. There's a new mad scientist with a beautiful assistant and a hunchback assistant.
A beautiful hunchback assistant.
Darlene, if we're playing Universal Horror Bingo, obviously we have the hunchback assistant. Is there villagers in an angry mob with torches?
Yes.
Again.
There's the Wolfman.
There's Wolfman. Yep.
There's Dracula.
It's John Carradine as Dracula.
Frankenstein.
It's John Carradine as Dracula. But hold on. He was in the last movie as Dracula. He was, I thought, bad. Or let's say, at the very least, not good in the last movie. In this, I'd say that he's still not good, but he's tolerable. He's tolerable in the role. He is not Bela Lugosi.
You have Mad Scientist.
Yeah, who's played by Onslow Stevens. It's Dr. Eidelman.
And he doesn't start off as a crazy. He becomes crazy.
I don't know.
Because he gets Dracula's blood in him.
Yeah, that's a plot point. But I think he's pretty crazy before then because he's dragging the monster out of the mud, and he's going to resurrect him, and he's playing around with weird fungus.
But the fungus was for a cure.
For many things.
For the hunchback.
Well, we'll get to that in the plot. But I'm saying that this movie, it actually had more enjoyable parts than the last one.
It flowed a lot better.
It flows better. It is still a rehash of common universal tropes. And if I was a if I was a kid during this era, okay, let's say my grandparents' age, when hey, they're in their teens or 20s when all of these films are coming out, and then there's no such thing as like home video or anything like that in the 1940s.
No.
Hold on, Darlene.
When this aired, my mom was 5 years old.
Talking about my grandparents. That since there's no home video or anything like that, that almost all of these films would clearly blend into each other. Because there are so many similarities into them that it almost feels kind of pointless to talk about the plot in them because the plot is the same thing. So at the very least, I'll talk about the plot points that are different from the last movie, because I can say if you've seen House of Frankenstein, you've seen 75% of House of Dracula. Not that they're repeating, they're not like re-showing stock footage from that movie. They do show some stock footage.
Yes, they do.
It's not like that. It's that it's pretty much the same plot beats all the way through it. So I'm just going to want to talk about the plot in here that is different. Okay? So the movie starts and we realize that nothing mattered in the last film. This is a Flash Gordon problem where you have your cliffhanger where things are seemingly happening that actually matter and are dramatic. So in the last movie, what did we see? We see Dracula dying, turning to bones because he's been exposed to sunlight. What happens in this movie? Dracula's perfectly fine.
Dracula is perfectly fine. And he turns to bone again.
Later on. Yeah, thank you. We're going to get to that. We have...
There is the continuity of Frankenstein and the bones of Dr. Niemann or whatever his name. Niemann.
That's in there, but you see, again, this was like the Frankenstein was buried underneath all this mud. He sunk into the bottom of the swamp, but it turns out that the swamp actually does have a bottom, and it comes out into a cave near the sea. And over however many hundreds of years or whatever, because they say after so many years, he moved through the ground and came out into the sea cave. Okay, so what? Like, you just want to have the monster in this movie.
And he wasn't even needed.
He wasn't even needed. This was a waste of Frankenstein's monster.
Well, the only thing that it allowed it to do was the villagers to actually...
menace him with fire again.
Yes.
At the end of the House of Frankenstein, we have Lon Chaney Jr. as the Wolfman. He is supposedly killed. Perfectly fine in this. Perfectly fine. And I will go so far as to say, moving away from the plot, the only reason this is worth watching is because of Lon Chaney Jr. as Lawrence Talbot and his story. That is the only thing that is worthwhile in this film, and it takes up maybe 20 minutes of the film total. So we've already talked about how the last movie does not matter, but then we have basically the same plot beats.
Now, this movie was supposed to be, when it was being put onto in the newspapers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be Wolfman versus Dracula.
Okay.
And I can see it more as Wolfman versus Dracula.
Do they meet?
Yes, they do.
They do?
Yes.
I'm looking through my notes here.
Dracula is the guy that Melzines starts to hypnotize. And it's Wolfman that has to...
See, they're in the same parts of the film, but I don't think they actually really interact. That's the thing again. Like, it just feels like these are two different movies. I'm going through my notes because, again, there's like 3 films now in a row where they just blend together so much because there's so little different in them that I think what happened, and I know we're still getting away from what plot is different, but I think Universal truly thought that they had a formula that was just printing money. And hey, look, it doesn't matter. Let's make a movie poster that looks very similar to the last movie poster. Very similar, not exact, but very similar, that has the same things. We're going to have another movie monster mashup. And it's going to have Lon Chaney Jr. as Wolfman. It's going to have John Carradine as Dracula. They didn't want to put any effort into anything about this movie. That's what it felt like. It felt like, hey, we're just going to release another movie that is going to make money. And we're going to invest so little money in it that we have to turn the lights down on set because we can't put any money into revitalizing the sets. So everything is filmed dark in this movie, if you did not notice, Darlene.
Yes, I did.
So we're going to spend as little money as possible. We're going to pay, let's say, Lon Chaney Jr. and John Carradine for their time. John Carradine, again, to me, is not a good Dracula. He's not awful. He's better than he was in the last movie. And they actually do a couple special effects in this that I thought were a little better than the last movie. Like when he turns into a bat or goes from a bat to a person. Like they don't just show his shadow transforming. They actually show his entire body doing it now. Like it's still cartoon, it's still drawn, but it looks really good. Anyway, I think what the deal is that there's another mad doctor, and this guy's named Dr. Idleman. And it turns out he's living in Dracula's castle.
That's right? What I thought it was.
It's because Dracula just pops up outside the window, and I'm like, oh crap, what is he doing here? Is he going to have to hypnotize somebody to come and open the window? Nope. He just opens the window and walks in, and I'm like, okay, so that means this is a place that he has been before and been invited in. But then you made the argument, wait a second, there shouldn't be a threshold here. Because it turns out that Dracula's castle now is like a hospital research facility for this Dr. Idleman. So there might not be a threshold issue anyway. Because you got to think that if another person moves into a house that Dracula's already been invited into, there might be a threshold difference. But again, I don't think they're actually dealing with any kind of real logic in their rules for how these supernatural beings work. And they clearly don't with Lon Chaney Jr., even though Lon Chaney's Wolfman in this, Lawrence Talbot, is the best part of this movie. So Dracula comes in and goes, hey, buddy, my coffin's in your basement. It's been locked up. Guard me during the day, and I'll give you my blood to research, and maybe you can find a cure for me, because I don't want to be immortal and drinking blood all the time.
Cure him of vampirism.
He wants to be cured of vampirism.
Or he says.
So he says. And does he? I honestly don't know.
I don't think he did. At first, when you first hear it, you think he does.
Maybe. He specifically says that, hey, look, if sunlight touches me, I'll die. Okay, well, we saw that in the last movie, that sunlight touched you, you turn to bone, and you're fine. It's not like people that saw this movie had 20 years to forget what happened. This was like less than a year, maybe about a year difference in release dates. So anyway, they're just crapping on their audience with this one. And he says, look, cure me, I'll help you out. It turns out that this Dr. Idleman, has two assistants. One is named Morel, and she's this beautiful blonde woman.
Mm-hmm.
And then he also has a hunchbacked nurse named Nina.
Which is the prettier of the two.
You actually think that it's
When
it's
they-
obviously it's clear that all they did was put like this kind of like backpack on her, basically.
Yeah, but whenever on, I shouldn't say prettier, I should say more, when the camera hits her, her eyes in that just suck you in.
She is more magnetic on film. She has more
Yes.
charisma that comes across on screen.
She's more magnetic.
And
on
she's
film.
lower built. That she's played by Jane Addams, by the way, and we were looking up Jane Addams going, okay, well, what else was she in? Because she clearly has screen chops. And it turns out that she was Vicky Vale in the Batman and Robin 1949 serial. And I was like, oh my God, that's really cool. She really wasn't in a ton of things, believe it or not. Very, very limited roles, like 31 credits to her name, and she died in 2014. One of the things that we kind of come across in a lot of these reviews is obviously a lot of the actors and actresses have passed away. And usually it's
and
been
a lot of westerns.
and lots of things from that are westerns. Yeah, but it's sad whenever I see, oh, somebody passed away and it wasn't that long ago. Like, I was alive. Most of the listeners here have been alive during most of these people that have that are in these films.
Them was who played that and them?
Oh, she's
That
still
was-
around, isn't she?
No,
The
the
girl
person.
actress, little girl from Them.
No, you said that somebody on this film was also in them.
It's on. Wasn't it Onslow Stevens who plays Idleman? Yeah, he's in Them. Onslow Stevens is in Them. He's Brigadier General Robert O'Brien. So he's probably the guy that was like listening to the plan to dump gasoline down the storm drains of Los Angeles and light those bugs up. I love that movie. Anyway, back to this piece of crap.
It's not a piece of
It's
crap.
not. No, there is some charming bits in it. That's what's weird. There are some charming bits in it. It's just that it feels like it's so repetitious.
I guess by now I gotta say this. I probably don't recommend this one, just because it's just like
No, I'm gonna recommend it.
you're going to recommend.
I'm gonna
it?
recommend it for one reason, and we're gonna get to it because there's resolution to one damn story arc in this whole thing. There's resolution,
Oh,
and it's
the
worth
Wolfman.
it. It's worth it.
Yeah.
Darlene,
Uh,
you had a smile on your face and a twinkle in your eye, and you're like, because in every one of these reviews where we have watched these movies with Lawrence Talbot, played by Lon Chaney Jr., that what do we say in these reviews? This poor man, he is suffering. All he wants to do is die. And he's so happy when he thinks he's going to die, like in the last movie. He's like, thank you. He turns back to his human self thinking that he was dead. Thing is, he pops back up in this. He's not dead. He's fine. The plot that is resolved is the fact that he is cured of lycanthropy. He is cured.
yes.
And the joy on his face that he is, see, even right now, you have this smile on your face.
Aaron,
Am I right?
it is kind of nice to have that.
He's so happy. He's so happy. And Lon Chaney Jr. is an actor.
Anyway, let's get to the plot.
That I've been talking about the plot. It's just that it's mostly just redone. So Talbot shows up. He's like, hey, look, doctor, I need help. I want to be cured. I want to die.
Before the next full moon.
Which is tonight. It's always like within the next few nights, the full moon. So, the Universal horror movies, the moon whips around the earth like once a week or something like that. I don't know. But anyway, he's like, hey, doctor, help me. And he's like, well, buddy, I can't help you right now. I've got like a guy with fangs in my basement sleeping in a coffin that wants to be cured too. I got
a hunchback that you need.
I got a beautiful hunchback woman who needs to have fungus applied to her bones so I can reshape them with my hands. By the way, that's what the doctor's doing. He's growing fungus that can soften bone and be remolded. So this comes into play with Talbot being cured because it turns out that all him turning into a freaking wolfman and going psycho when seeing a full moon is caused by one portion of his brain swelling once a month. Yeah, he turns into
Yes,
a
I
full
know.
wolfman. Like, I don't get this.
I didn't get it because it was blood transfusions for the vampire.
Because
Uh,
Dracula has parasites in his blood that's causing vampirism, which I actually thought that's kind of interesting. That's fair. I thought that was kind of interesting. Like, well, okay, well, why is
but
that?
conveniently, Talbot runs out and goes to the caves, and the doctor goes down to the caves, finds the Frankenstein monster and Newman's skeleton.
But before that, Talbot runs to the village to lock himself up.
Oh yes, I forgot about
and
that.
and it is very clear that the police, the villagers, everybody that has like any kind of official power in this town now knows werewolves are real. They see Talbot change in the jail cell, and everyone is utterly shocked.
And there was this character that is constantly riling up the
They're villagers in this. Come on, the villagers don't
It's
need
one
any reason to riot.
No, but they did put a person that was even the
Riling
police
him up.
calls him a troublemaker.
Yeah, he's a creepy dude. I think that was decent acting because he really gave across the creep factor. But these are villagers in a Universal horror film. There could be like a little girl that trips and falls and skins her knee, and that's enough excuse for them to light up the torches and burn things. I make a joke about it, but I swear to God, it's every one of these movies that the villagers just light up torches and go on marches through the village, through the countryside. All they need is some armbands on, and they're awful. All of these villagers are awful. And in this movie, they're no different. They're terrible people. So we get the whole exposition about the doctor finding this fungus. He finds out that this cave turns out to actually be the perfect place to grow this fungus. And it also just so happens to have a staircase that was built into it, leading right to his lab.
Because that's the thing that goes down into the
yeah, I know.
The
It's God. Okay, so everything is incredible convenience in this movie.
And by the way, I got to make this point. By now, Lon Chaney's character has got to be 120 years old.
He's ancient, but he's not aging because of lycanthropy or whatever.
I don't know, but we keep staying in the same time, the same decade, same, thing. But somehow years pass.
Yeah, it's
but it's still the same time.
Yeah. Because every at the beginning of every movie, it's been decades since the last time we heard from Frankenstein's monster or whatever. And here's Lon Chaney Jr. He does look different in this movie. He has a mustache. He's rocking a stash,
and he's gained weight.
He's gained a little bit of weight, but I mean that's because he's been eating so many people and begging for death. When you're that depressed, you're going to binge eat, and he's eating people. He doesn't like doing it. He hates doing it. He wants to be alone all the time when people are trying to be nice to him.
Let's get back to this thing because you're forgetting.
There's a whole scene where Moonlight Sonata is being played and Dracula gets into the head of the blonde nurse.
Yep.
And starts making her play the Jig of Death or something like that. This is the music that's in my mind. And she's like, I see nothing but death and suffering. And it's a very strange scene, but I liked it when it started because she was playing Moonlight Sonata, and that's a beautiful song. And it's always connected with vampires because of a dozen different things. Well, it probably stemmed from this, along with a couple other movies, but one of the ones that most people today know the vampire connection with Moonlight Sonata in is from Interview with the Vampire, because Lestat plays Moonlight Sonata when he comes back out of the swamp and says, you've been a very bad girl,
Well, don't forget there was the flashback to the LSD of the movies.
Oh, the previous movies? Yeah, there's the early LSD tests in Austria. So let's see here. The blonde gets mind screwed more and more and more and stumbles up the stairs because Dracula is really deep into her head. And this is where, I thought it was interesting with the idea that vampirism is caused by a parasite, again, there's been more modern movies that have also dealt with that like vampirism comes from sort of parasite, but in this it suddenly becomes a detriment to the story because you're like, well, how does a parasite cause Dracula not to appear in mirrors? How is he able to like just shapeshift between a tiny little bat that weighs like just like a
that
pound?
ain't a tiny bat.
Yeah,
But
it's a big bat, but you know what I mean? Like,
it's
how does like sunlight just turn him
MC's
into bone? How does how does getting staked in the heart any different from getting staked through the eye? Like either one should kill you, but I guess the parasites are very selective. And then this is how are the parasites giving him the power to get into people's heads?
head.
Like the point is that Dracula should be supernatural. If you're giving him all these weird supernatural powers, okay, let's have it supernatural. You could say that, hey, look, one piece of this is caused by like the parasite or something like that, and then it's like still magical. Like
A parasite that gives you where the sun really.
Yeah,
I'm allergic to the sun, but
you don't burst into
in
flames.
I get sick.
You get sunburned very easily.
And that would.
I'm technically allergic to being staked through the heart. This makes sense that a vampire would die when being staked through the heart because it's a major bodily organ. I don't know. I like the idea of either say there is a completely rational explanation for this and vampires don't have crazy supernatural abilities. They're just fast or strong, whatever, right? They might be functionally immortal.
Or use it as the supernatural shit.
Yeah. So anyway, Dracula and the Doctor are basically they basically have determined that the Doctor is going to give Dracula blood transfusions because he thinks giving him his blood will cure him of vampirism, completely ignoring the fact that Dracula basically imbibes blood constantly from other people and does not eat. And that the parasites, even in the transfusion of blood, infect the blood.
Disbelief.
I know.
Disbelief.
So anyway, at some point, like the Doctor is unconscious because of all the blood transfusion that's happened. And Dracula gets up and goes, ha ha ha, and flips around the switch on the transfusion machine and basically squeezes a whole bunch of his blood into the Doctor. Thus begins the Doctor going crazy, quote unquote, as you would say. I would say the Doctor was already kind of nuts. But this drove him over the edge. This turned him into a Renfield.
Yes.
See, because he wasn't killed. He wasn't technically turned into a vampire. He was made into a Renfield. Which is a good flashback to the original Dracula. And I'm not sure if they intended that. Maybe they intended, well, you see, here's the other weird thing. The Doctor doesn't show a reflection. His reflection actually fades away while he's watching. So maybe he is a vampire. I don't know.
I don't know how
he wasn't drained.
I don't know how he doesn't have a
parasites prevent reflections, I guess. So anyway, Dracula runs to his coffin, and the Doctor is now pissed off because he has been exposed to Dracula's blood. So he basically exposes Dracula to sunlight. Dracula turns into bones. He's dead. Again. No, he's not. I'm sure he's not. I'm sure that there is another movie in the continuity. In fact, I am absolutely positive there is, because we absolutely know about Abbott Costello meet Dracula.
Okay, somebody needs to take his bones and scatter them. Wasn't that a supernatural too? That there was a demon that you had to.
I don't know. There's tons of things that are about like you have to dismember them. There's tons of that their bones or their organs are scattered across the earth. So anyway, it doesn't matter. The Doctor ends up starting to kill people. He ends up doing this surgery on Talbot, curing him of lycanthropy. And this is the best scene where the police are basically searching around for this doctor now because they think that it's Talbot that's gone around and killed people, because everybody in the village knows that Talbot's a werewolf. And Talbot walks out and watches the full moon rise, and he doesn't turn into a werewolf, and the joy on his face.
But before that, it was the doctor killed somebody that was going to the village by horse.
Yeah, he just
and
kills
wagon.
him.
Kills him. And then it gets blamed on to
Talbot. But he's like, no, I'm sorry. The doctor comes back and like puts himself back together.
Oh, he killed Siegfried.
Yeah, and he goes, no, it can't be Talbot because Talbot's been here. I just did surgery on him. He can't even move. There's like a hole in his head. Anyway, Talbot's cured. It is a joy to watch those scenes. By the way, the Frankenstein's monsters in this movie, theoretically.
The doctor keeps trying to wake him up when he's like in his Renfield, where the vampire is starting to take over. And Nina, the hunchback female, constantly stops him from waking him up. But at the end, he wakes up Frankenstein.
Yeah, and Talbot actually guns down the doctor. And supposedly kills him, which means he's not a vampire. But, like, the monster wakes up and starts kind of stumbling around. But this is where we get the torch-wielding mob.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're all ready to just burn anything to the ground because weird things are happening. And Talbot ends up setting fire to the lab with the monster in it. The monster burns to death. Talbot lives to tell the tale, like looking out into the future with this blonde nurse on his arm. The end.
I didn't like her.
No. Okay, so we've already
kind of
talked
about...
Nina was
the sweetheart.
We've already talked about... Yes, Nina was fantastic. Nina was actually the sweetheart. We've talked about the one thing that I felt honestly worked, and that's Lon Chaney Jr. as Talbot, and his storyline finally ending. Now, mind you, there is one more movie with Lon Chaney Jr. as the Wolfman, and that's Abbott and Costello Meet the Wolfman. But this has to be canonically the final film. Because I do not believe that Talbot later on just turns back into a freaking werewolf. I refuse to believe that. And I refuse to believe that the Abbott and Costello movies are in the canon of the original movies, the Golden Age. So anyway, what works is Lon Chaney Jr. and Talbot.
One thing.
Darlene, there has to be more. There has to be more. Because I can think of one more thing I think I actually liked. I actually will say there's two things I liked. I liked the animation of Dracula going from bat to human, human to bat. I thought that was well animated, but that's such a minor point. And then I liked Onslow Stevens as Idleman. He was actually a bit sympathetic at the beginning. Obviously, when he was given Dracula blood, he went crazy.
The parasite started taking over his mind.
But he's like an actual caring person at the beginning.
Yes.
He's an interesting character. He's honestly trying to help. And I think the actor Onslow Stevens does a pretty good job. I think I will add into the actors doing a good job category Jane Addams as Nina. Like you said, she's a sweetheart. She's a good actress. She's charming on screen. I actually think she has almost as much magnetism as Lon Chaney Jr. Lon Chaney, man, star, American Idol.
I will say this: if you do watch it, her humpback actually has ridges, like it's the spine.
Yeah, it's a good piece of makeup. Let's say a special effects prosthetic.
And this is a hunchback that doesn't act like a insane.
No, she's caring. She's sweet. She does want to have the surgery to soften her bone to get her back refixed. What the hell happens to her in this movie, Darlene?
I thought the doctor shot her.
Yeah, that's right. You can tell like how baffled I was at one point in this movie when things were just getting weird.
Everything just went poof on the.
Yeah, it was like. Yeah, you're right. It was like an hour of build-up and then 10 minutes of chaos. And the only thing that was really, truly memorable is the stuff with Lon Chaney Jr. And
Because they slowed it down again.
Yeah, they slowed it down again because this is a payoff to X amount of movies.
Because he's sitting in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
Watching the moonrise.
Well, he stands up and goes out into the garden to watch the moonrise, and it's again like a very effective special effect where they actually have the moon rising on the back of the set. It looks good. It's effective, and you can see like the terror on his face of watching this moonrise. Like this is the thing he fears the most, and like the doctor even says, you must face your fears. I have faith that I have cured you. Have faith in me, etc. And it's actually a very good scene. What doesn't work is, unless you have something else that you would like to add about what works. Don't shake your head. You can say this audio podcast.
I'm like going, is there anything that I think that...
The credits were interesting because they looked like melting celluloid being put into reverse and like melting into the screen. Okay, like we're really having to pick for good things.
I didn't really care for it though.
What, the credits?
The credits.
I mean, they were interesting. They were different.
It made me go, that's different. How did they do that? Okay.
To me, it was like they melted it and they just reversed it. They reversed the. Anyway, what didn't work was the plot.
But it worked more than the other one.
Yes. It worked more, and only because of the damn Lon Chaney Jr. Wolfman resolution.
I will also go with that. It didn't feel like it was a bunch of cars in a train that you were having to jump from. You were jumping from one.
Well, yes. House of Frankenstein felt like two distinct movies, and even inside those two parts,
it felt like you were jumping chapter. There was a chapter that you had to jump over before.
In this, it feels like it's one movie. It's still bad. It's not properly put together.
And I don't understand why they needed Frankenstein.
They don't. Glenn Strange plays Frankenstein's monster, just like in the last movie. He is completely pointless to this movie. Completely superfluous. I can't even talk.
I guess it's to give the village something to burn down.
Yeah, the villagers need a reason to riot. Darlene, they don't need a reason to riot. They're going to riot anyway. These are the worst cops. They need like we've said before, the National Guard just needs to be stationed in this region.
The police officer that was trying to keep them down, it wasn't like that. What one was it that the police officer egged them on?
Yeah.
There was one where the police officer or whatever.
Most of the times the cops are really trying to be like reasonable people.
But there was one where they actually instigated it.
I think the best cop we have is the one guy that has like no arm because he had his arm ripped off by Frankenstein in the first movie.
I think that's the one that egged it on.
No, he's actually pretty
hey, I know what you're talking about. The one I called General.
Yeah, that he has like the wooden arm and I'm like, I really like that guy, and he is fairly iconic. Like I said, he's in they parody his character in Young Frankenstein. That he is just so iconic. Maybe that is a movie we should probably review for Earth vs. Soup is Young Frankenstein, because it actually is a better Frankenstein movie than most of the movies that Universal did with Frankenstein in them. Most, not all. I'll say the first two Frankenstein movies put together, Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein, are good together. Very good together. But again, Frankenstein's not in this movie. He dies right at the end.
Stop having the villagers be.
Every one of these damn movies. Everyone. Is there any acting that you thought was bad in this? There's parts where I honestly think John Carradine does a bad job. There's parts where I think he's doing a good job. But it's usually when John Carradine's trying to be Dracula and getting into people's heads that I think, oh, God. Bela Lugosi was just so much better at this. And it's when John Carradine's trying to be like Mr.
And I
Charm,
don't
just like
know how the
talking.
writers. It also threw me off with the blonde of her babbling after
Yeah.
being, and I'm just like,
That whole scene where she played Moonlight Sonata and
It
he's
started
getting into
well,
her head. Yeah, it
but it
started well.
didn't.
And then it just completely degenerated into this kind of nonsense. Man. And here's the thing. I recommend this movie. I'm going to recommend this movie. It is a very, very, very light recommendation, and only because of the werewolf Lon Chaney thing.
If you wanted, Aaron's recommending it if you want to see the resolution of Wolfman.
Otherwise, this is a pointless movie. Pointless. It's not bad.
But it's not as bad as the other one, because the other one felt like all they wanted
disjointed.
to do. Yeah, it was disjointed.
This is not disjointed. It's just pointless. It's not bad. It's just pointless, except for the resolution to the Wolfman storyline. That's the only reason I'm recommending it. If you took out the Wolfman thing, obviously, no, I'm not recommending this. This is one of these rare cases where I'm going to say that this film is like maybe a 4 out of 10, maybe even a 3.5 out of 10, but I'm still going to recommend it because of that one thing. I didn't like it. If I never watch it again, no, I can't say that.
We have it on DVD.
No, because I probably will watch it again just because of the damn werewolf stuff in it, which is actually good. Hey, I can fast forward now through all the bits except the Talbot stuff with Lon Chaney Jr. I'm not going to force you to watch it.
Thank you.
But I'm just saying, like, I could see myself watching this again as long as it was just the scenes with Talbot. Like, honestly, there's no other reason to watch it. And I hate saying, because John Carradine is a good actor.
It's almost like you want to take some of these movies and cut them up and make a good movie out of all of it.
If I was an actual film student, and I'm not, and I never have been, I think there's a case to be made of re-editing the entire Frankenstein.
Universal
Frankenstein movies into one Frankenstein movie that's maybe 3 hours long.
That would work.
That would be solid. That would be a solid. Maybe,
and I think you could do that with Werewolf too.
Or let me backtrack a little bit. 2 movies that equal about 3 hours. Okay, 2 movies that equal about 3 hours. I think you could edit all of the Frankenstein stuff together into that. I think you could.
Even the Wolfman ones?
Though no, because the first Wolfman movie is solid. We both agreed on that. The first Wolfman movie is solid. The second Wolfman movie isn't bad. It's not great, but I don't know. I don't even remember how long the first Wolfman movie is. But since it's solid, I have to just go, okay, that's like a 100% right through it, right? Darlene's looking back through her notes going, oh crap, I don't even remember what episode The Wolfman was. She-Wolf of London was pretty good, but that's the next year. We've already watched that. And that has nothing to do with Lon Chaney Jr.'s character. That was a good movie, though. I think you would probably be able to put it into about... It doesn't matter, Darlene. I think you could probably do it into about 4 hours worth of movies for The Wolfman. Dracula, honestly, I don't know. I mean, obviously the first movie, Dracula, is fantastic. Beyond that, though, I don't know. Anyway, Darlene's just continuing to look through the notes. We're not recommending it, are we? I mean, I am, but it's a weird recommendation. Any other final thoughts? We do have more Universal films to watch, but most of the Universal films that we have to watch still are either mummy ones that are later than the Golden Age. Because we're moving into the Silver Age stuff. And I don't think
we need to watch the Abbott and Costello ones, because they're...
You liked the Abbott and Costello
I like
movies.
them, but they're not in the... They're comedy.
Yeah, but...
And remember, we did do the comedy, and we were like, why are we watching this one?
Which comedy?
I can't remember what it was.
I think we should watch the Abbott and Costello ones. And we have watched a comedy a couple times for this podcast.
I know, and you've said you shouldn't.
No, you said Cat from Outer Space, which is a comedy, and I'm like, okay, it's fine.
But it was more science fiction than comedy.
Yes, but the Abbott and Costello movies are still really highly regarded, and we've watched Monster Squad because of the Universal Monster connection, and that's a comedy. But there's a lot of stuff in it that is interesting. One can say that the first Mummy movie, not the first Mummy movie, is it the first Mummy movie? Yeah, where they have like the guy from Brooklyn who's the comic
there was
relief.
a comic relief.
There is comic relief in it. And it didn't work.
But Abbott
but it's
and
fine.
Costello is the same stick.
Shtick.
Yes, that word.
I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Over and over and over
We'll
again.
figure it out. We'll probably, at the very least, we'll watch it. And if we think, okay, no, there's no way. We just can't. This does not fit. It is just bad comedy or whatever. Comedy that doesn't hold up well. That's fine. We might mention it at the beginning of an episode and say, hey, we watched it. Yeah, the comedy doesn't hold up. Or it does. Here's the review. Doesn't matter. We'll figure it out. Any other final thoughts about House of Dracula?
House of Dracula.
At least the movie title. At least the movie title actually has something to do with the movie because it's Dracula's house.
Yes, it is.
Credit where credit's due. Credit where credit's due. It has something to do with the movie. So we'll leave it there, folks. I'm Aaron.
I'm Darlene. Good evening.
And keep watching the skies.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thanks for listening to this episode of This Week in Geek. Hungry for more? Check out our website at thisweekingeek.net. You can subscribe to the podcast, browse our Twitter and Instagram, and leave your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like to give us some feedback, send us an email at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. Tune in next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.